So, today I'm going to be telling you a tale of murder, attempted presidential assassinations, a secretive occult group, and Austrian painter enthusiasm. And so you might be saying, Josh, are you trying to get yourself in trouble with YouTube? And the answer is no, but maybe yes, a little bit. So this is actually the fourth proper attempt at seemingly killing Trump.
Has there been another one?
Yeah. He didn't get as far as some of the others. Certainly didn't get as far as Crooks. So the first one is Thomas Crooks. That was the Butler, Pennsylvania one.
Well, it's the first one that we heard about. I bet there's been loads who,
There's the Trump International Golf Club one.
Yep.
That was the Ukraine mad guy.
Right.
And then there was the Coachella rally after that, where a man had possession of 2 firearms, ammunition, multiple passports with different names, and an unregistered vehicle with a fake license.
So that one never got off a shot?
No.
Okay, the other 2 did, yep.
And
what was
this
the fourth
is...
one?
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I didn't
new
hear about
one.
this.
This is the new one that came about. So the person you're seeing on screen here is Nikita Kasap, who is a 17-year-old from Wisconsin. What he did was he murdered his stepfather, Donald Mayer, 51, and mother, Titania Kasap, who was 35, a bit of an age gap there. So he shot his mother at least 3 times, twice in the stomach and once in the neck, and then he killed his stepfather by shooting him in the back of the head.
Sorry, the mother was
later the same
31.
day. 35.
35. Oh, okay. And he's how old?
17.
Right. Okay. Right. Donald is obviously a bit of a player. I mean, the dad.
Mm-hmm. Stepdad, yeah. So he didn't kill the family dog, who he took with him to flee.
Okay, well, there's
The
that.
scene. So he did show a slight bit of mercy there. And he was arrested after running a stop sign while driving his stepdad's Volkswagen Atlas in Kansas, which was about 800 miles away from his home. So he'd run away, and on the 1st of March, the local county sheriff found them both dead. And you might be saying, well, what's this got to do with Trump?
Yes.
Well, he allegedly killed his parents to gain the financial means and independence, I suppose, to assassinate the president, Donald Trump, and overthrow the US government. So he was going to use the $14,000 US he took from them to finance this attempted assassination. And he also planned a terrorist attack, which included drones and explosives, which I hear is one of those things that is perhaps more difficult to guard against.
I've got to say, I mean, despite the fact what he did was truly awful and reprehensible, you can't fault him for his ambition.
Yes, I suppose that's a way of looking at
Yes.
it. I mean, I think if your ambition is to kill your family, that's a pretty bad ambition.
Oh, yeah, but he went much bigger than that. I mean, he was, drone strikes on... I mean, that's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. So, the material found on his phone, and this is according to the authorities, so from now on, take everything I say with a pinch of salt, was linked to the Order of 9 Angles. Anyone familiar with them?
Is that a Masonic thing or something?
Not quite Masonic.
Right.
But you're sort of right about the esoteric aspect of it.
Okay.
So he also wrote a 3-page manifesto, apparently, explaining his actions, which he allegedly had neo mid-century German views and was apparently anti-Semitic. Not that those things... I would imagine that they're both part of the same thing. But apparently he also had images of a certain Austrian painter on his phone with the caption, "Hail this Austrian painter, hail the white race, hail victory." And this struck me as a little bit strange, because that's sort of like a socialist having a picture of Marx with the caption, "We need to seize the means of production for the proletariat." A little bit strange, isn't it?
Why?
I don't know. It's like me saying, having a picture of, I don't know, Ludwig von Mises saying, "I need Austrian economics."
Yeah, but it's true. You're all a bunch of socialists.
So we're saying that he was an admirer of the Austrian painter.
Yes. And
Yet he wanted to kill Trump, who absolutely the entire left wing calls literally Hitler all day long, every day.
Mm-hmm. but don't focus on that part of it, because
Right,
that's actually a reasonable argument and might actually help legitimize things. But apparently he discussed his plans with others as well, and other individuals allegedly assisted and were aware of his intentions. Don't know anything about these people. That's
Did they work for CNN, or were they just mates of his? I mean,
I don't know.
Right.
We don't. That's all we know
Okay.
so far. That's all we've been told.
Yep.
However, there is a massive, deep rabbit hole with his association to the Order of Nine Angles. So, before I go on, paying attention, the charges are...
Why wouldn't I?
Just making sure. Charges at the state level are 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of hiding a corpse, theft or property over $10,000, misappropriating ID to obtain money. Potential federal charges include conspiracy, presidential assassination, and use of weapons of mass destruction. So that's a pretty long list. But anyway,
Use of weapons of mass destruction. So he actually got the drones, did he?
I don't know. These are potential charges. I don't know whether it's actually...
I mean, if he actually used weapons of mass destruction, I mean, that's kind of burying the lead, to be honest. I would start
He
with
didn't
that.
actually use them yet.
Okay.
So
He
he intended to use them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Order of the Nine Angles. So I'm no expert, and I only have a cursory knowledge of esotericism and the occult, and nor am I into it. To be clear, I just know about it because it's interesting. So the Order of the Nine Angles is not an organisation, but a form of belief. It's a system of belief, I suppose. It's got no real organisation, and is probably its adherents are a very small number of people. It's a sort of synthesis of Norse mythology, ancient Greek mythology, and Hermeticism.
Okay, it's starting to sound a little bit cool now.
Mm-hmm. They're described as Satanists, but that's not really true in the sense that most people mean it, as they reject Abrahamic religion entirely. They self-describe Satanists as Abrahamic atheists, which I think is fair enough. They are sort of atheists, really. They don't actually believe in Satan a lot of the time.
Okay.
And they use the term themselves as a sort of placeholder for a sinister divinity. So they might describe Satanism, but they don't mean it in the conventional sense. And this order originated in the United Kingdom, and the group claims it was established in the Welsh Marches, that's marches and not marshes, so the borderlands, in the late 60s by a woman who had previously been involved in a secretive pre-Christian sect which survived in the region, apparently. And the account also states that in 1973, a man named Anton Long was initiated into the group and subsequently became its Grand Master. And that man is believed to be this guy, David Myatt. Here he is speaking to the BBC in 2000. So he's believed to be the founder of the Order of Nine Angles, as well as the white nationalist, I can probably say it once, neo-Nazi group Combat 18. He denies this, although even the Order of the Nine Angles' own literature names him on a few occasions. So I think it's pretty safe to say he's probably him. And I'm pointing this out because it's interesting. His father worked as a civil servant for the British government. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all going to come together. So Nick Lowles has recorded a conversation with this guy. He met him in a pub and I think secretly recorded it, and the file is now online.
Nick Lowles.
Of Hope Not Hate.
Oh, him.
Yes.
The guy who vets all the candidates for reform.
That's the man, yes.
And he also runs a communist hate group on
that
the
is
side.
widely thought of as being an intelligence agency thing.
Yes.
At least associated with them. And I would also like to point out that Nick Lowles, not too long ago, less than a year ago, had his company's address in his Twitter bio at some point last year. And if you're dealing with these sorts of people, there's no way you would do that without some sort of intelligence protection. Just throwing that one out there. This is my own speculation. So remember I said that this guy set up both the Order of the Nine Angles, which is an occultist group. He also set up Combat 18, which is potentially a neo-Nazi group. So in the UK, in 1998, Combat 18 leader was found out to be a police informer, which is Interesting, isn't it? So it says here, Charlie Sargent, the former leader of Combat 18, who is currently serving a life sentence for the murder of fellow Nazi Christopher Castle, was a police informant, according to a BBC television documentary. And it presented evidence and confirmed many suspicions that it had been infiltrated by the police the whole time.
It's quite sporting, this, because I think that all of these neo-Nazi groups would have disappeared decades ago if it wasn't for the police and intelligence service bolstering their numbers, keeping them alive.
I do think
their
that
subs.
they are a significant number of people involved, at the very least.
I wonder if there's any actual neo-Nazis left inside them, or if it's just all police now.
There might be one. I think there are one or two actual real people,
right,
that do a lot of the bad things.
Right, and the other 25 people in the room turning up, making quorum, paying the subs are just police.
I guess so.
Yes.
Here's another one. So this is how the FBI funded a book publisher, and I'll read from this a little bit. So it says, a man with close ties to white supremacist organizations has received more than $100,000 from the Federal Bureau of Investigations as an informant, court documents have revealed. Joshua Caleb Sutter of Columbia, South Carolina, has worked with the FBI since 2003, according to records obtained by investigative journalist Ali Winston. So this guy was actually the leader of the Temple of Blood. That's Temple OV Blood, not OF. And that's how it's spelt for whatever reason. And this is the American cell connected to the Order of the Nine Angles, which of course was originally set up in the UK, in England and Wales, I suppose. So he was the leader of that group, basically the American chapter of it. And of course this happened, the recent plan to assassinate Trump happened in the United States, of course. He also infiltrated Atomwaffen, which is another neo-Nazi group, probably in his capacity working for the FBI. And the only reason that this all fell apart was that he started handing out material to college students, which in their mind legitimized the crackdown, right? But also it made him much more visible and therefore potentially jeopardized the FBI's intel gathering. It's also worth mentioning that Ruby Ridge, you know, that horrible thing when the federal government murdered 2 innocent people. The father of the family who were attacked by the government, Randy Weaver, went to an Aryan Nation meeting. He wasn't a member, he just attended the odd thing.
Yep.
You know, First Amendment and all that, fair enough. And there was a man at these meetings that for about a year tried to pester him into selling him a shotgun that was sawn off slightly below the legal limit. And so eventually...
I wonder what that guy's other profession was.
Yes. He was an FBI informant, by the way.
Oh, right, okay.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yes.
And eventually Randy Weaver ended up giving in, which was the entire justification for the feds raiding his isolated property that he lived on self-sufficiently with his family, minding his own business, and resulted in the murder of his son and wife.
Well, he did saw off a shotgun very slightly below the legal limit.
Mm-hmm. But let's just remind ourselves here that what I've done is I've listed lots of these sorts of groups that have got proven links to, you know, the feds. Either people being informers, working for the FBI specifically, or even if they joined the group, eventually they got some dirt on them and managed to twist them to becoming an informant. That's usually what happens. It's not that they infiltrate them. It's that they get dirt on someone and they blackmail them into becoming an informant for them. So by this point, you're saying, okay, well, we get that perhaps there's some suspicious circumstances around this. But why would they target Trump specifically? As in within the Order of Nine Angles, because of course I think that this 17-year-old was not, you know, working for the FBI. I think if there is any sort of involvement in that sense, maybe it's the people he was communicating with at the most, but we can't say that for certain. We don't know is the truth of it. But of course there's enough reason for people in the intelligence agencies, given what Trump has said, to feel like their career, their life, not in the sense that Trump's going to kill them, but their entire way of life might be ruined.
A gravy train.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But also,
which is enough incentive.
But also extremes thrive on victimization. So I can sort of see how if someone is in that sphere and they constantly get bombarded with a message that everything around them is going to kill them and destroy them, that's usually how things get done.
In the
I'm not supporting it. I'm explaining a social phenomena. When people get used into victimization narrative, they tend to see everything as self-defense, even the most crazy thing, such as what he did.
No, that's a fair point. So here is, surprisingly, the Order of Nine Angles has a website, and this is a post from the 20th of December 2023, where they endorsed Biden-Harris, and I'm just going to read this in their own words because that's not what the mainstream media does, but I'm not saying this group is good by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think they are. But here's what they say. Politics can be summarized as a net loss for humanity, a political system we have adopted out of fear of the others, in which the lowest common denominator of opportunism and emotionality triumphs over any kind of leadership. That being said, democracy is failing worldwide. Nations are going broke, preparing for war, inundated with refugees, beset by internal refugees, ruled by careerist psychopaths, and perhaps most ominously, electing leaders who are associated with foreign powers. This means the arc of history bends towards the end of democracy, and soon. The last thing we want right now is one of these Christian Band-Aid do-gooders like Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis to take over and fix things. We want to rush into the abyss so that the end of history can come to its natural terminus and a new dark age will be visited upon the earth.
Error. They're making an error. Accelerationism doesn't work. If it did, South Africa would have been fixed a decade ago.
That's true. In this new era, might will make right, the claw and tooth will always be red, and blood will cross the land like an ever-flowing stream. The strong will oppress the weak, and the weak will die, and natural selection will resume. This can only happen through weak humanist leadership that will stumble its way into war, famine, recession, terrorism, corruption, and human misery. The self-deletions will leave before the battle commence. Only Biden-Harris can bring about this advancement of history, and therefore we endorse the Biden-Harris campaign in 2024. So I think that the motive here is quite clear, isn't it? Although, of course, this wasn't written by that 17-year-old, you can see why.
When
they've got associated,
they've got bits of it right here and there, but they've just weaved it in with a whole load of just absolute schizo nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that. Judging by what I read here, it seems more like, wildly irrational thinking. I detract. I don't think the.
I think that's a fairly safe bet. I think they would even describe themselves as irrational, coming from esoteric occultism.
Perhaps.
So you might say that these groups have been linked to murders, assassinations, and terror plots, and so, on the face of it, it seems like a matter of public safety that these groups are heavily infiltrated by intelligence types and informants. I think that that's a pretty good and strong argument, right? That it could just be that it is as it looks, and there's nothing much more to it than that these people are a danger to the public, and therefore they're of concern to...
Well, the only thing that I wonder about is not whether they've been infiltrated by the feds, is there anyone in them who isn't in the feds? That's the only thing that my question.
Well, from what I've been able to gather from my research, they do seem to scoop up legitimate believers, but it seems like a very significant portion are involved in intelligence. So let's take, for example, the London nail bombings. You might be able to remember this one, Dan, from 1999.
Oh, yes, the Admiral Duncan pub one.
Yeah, it was a few. So basically he targeted 3 different places. It was a largely black area, was it Bengali area, and then a largely gay community area with nail bombs, and it killed multiple people, injured multiple people, and then what happened was there was a strong public appetite, understandably, to prevent a future attack because it's scary, just random explosions.
Well, nail bombs are bad, yes.
Mm-hmm. And what it did do is it gave the government justification to pass lots of legislation that might otherwise have faced lots of wider scrutiny. So you've got the Terrorism Act of 2000, the Criminal Justice Act of 2003, the Racial and Religious Hatred Act of 2006. So lots of these things cite things like
You're not going where I think you're going with this, are you?
What's that?
Well, we spent the whole time talking about how most of this stuff is just the feds in disguise.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying it's possible. I'm not saying I know for certain. I'm just saying that there is an incentive. There is precedent.
Right.
So here is the BBC approaching David Myatt, basically accusing him of being the main inspiration for this attack. And so he's obviously the person implicated in forming the Order of the Nine Angles, and here he is being held responsible for this. And as far as he was aware, he wasn't necessarily that affiliated with that group. But they confronted him at his home. So it was certainly believed that he played a role in it, even though it may or may not have been the case. Right. So I think that what I'm trying to point out here is that it's entirely possible. A lot of people in intelligence agencies have their backs up against a wall. I'm not saying it's happened. I'm not saying it's because of that. I'm just saying that it makes sense to bear it in mind, because the people releasing all the information to the public are the intelligence agencies. They're the ones that have swept this up. And
that Thomas Crook's kid, for example, there's definitely something fishy going on there.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth mentioning as well that he got caught by local police. So it was the local police that found his parents' bodies. It was the local police that pulled him over when he was driving his stepdad's car. Mm-hmm. And so perhaps it foiled things. And just an added layer of, I suppose, confusion here is that we also know that lots of the intelligence agencies take this esoteric stuff quite seriously. So there are lots of different... This is a CIA program called the Gateway Program. It's one of the prominent ones. There's also Project Sunstreak, which is another one where the CIA were involved in investigating things like that. Here's a CIA report on entropy and psychokinesis. I've always been unable to pronounce that word for whatever reason.
Psychokinesis?
Psychokinesis, thank you. And then, of course, there's things that everyone knows about.
Can you move
MK
things
Ultra.
with your mind?
I've been trying. It just doesn't work. I've not been able to do it. Clearly, I've just not been doing it right. So on the one hand, they've been infiltrating these groups probably because they are dangerous. I think that's fair to say. On the other, they're also heavily involved in the same things that many of these groups are actually looking at the same time. And one has to wonder, this assassination attempt, how did a 17-year-old kid manage to basically plan all of this and know how he's about to approach it, who was talking to him? And I think that when the US government is at war with the intelligence agencies, and the intelligence agencies, we know for certain, are not averse to carrying out these sorts of things abroad. We have plenty of evidence for that.
Well, it's literally their job to do it abroad.
Exactly. Is there really a big difference between them doing it domestically and them doing it externally? I don't think there is. I think that there's a strong incentive there. I don't know for certain, and I'm not going to suggest that it's a done deal or anything, but it's worth keeping in mind.
So to be clear, you're not saying that the feds are behind some of this stuff. You're just not saying that.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. I think the fact that there's this long rabbit hole and many of these groups seem to be inundated with this sort of thing, that if he was coordinating with people, I think there's a good chance one of them was connected to an intelligence agency, is what I'm saying in a nutshell. It's a very deep rabbit hole. I'm not surprised many people haven't looked into it, but there it is. If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.